The German shepherd's teeth were inches from the maid's throat when the billionaire's arm locked around her waist, yanking her backward so hard she gasped for air. Her heart hammered as Duke's snarl echoed through the mansion hallway, his black eyes fixed on her like she was his target. She had worked in this house for 3 years, cleaned every corner, and never once had the dog looked at her like he wanted to kill her. "Stay back!" Mr. Harrison shouted, his grip tightening as Duke lunged again, his chain rattling against the kennel door. The metal groaned under 200 pounds of pure muscle and rage. 2 security guards stood frozen near the entrance, faces pale as ghosts. The maid couldn't breathe, couldn't think. All she could do was stare at the dog she had fed every morning, the dog who used to rest his massive head on her lap during lunch breaks in the garden. What had changed? And why did the animal who once loved her now want her dead? Before we dive in, drop your city in the comments. We'd love to know where you're watching from. And don't forget to like and subscribe so you never miss another powerful story like this. Now, let's continue. 3 days earlier, everything had been normal. The maid, a 28-year-old woman who had worked her way up from nothing, lived in the staff quarters of one of the city's most expensive penthouses. Her boss, Thomas Harrison, was a billionaire who owned half the commercial real estate downtown. Marble floors stretched endlessly. Crystal chandeliers hung from ceilings 3 stories high. Art worth millions covered the walls. But none of that mattered to the young woman. What mattered was Duke. Duke was Mr. Harrison's protection dog, a massive German shepherd trained by former military handlers. Powerful, intelligent, and fiercely loyal. Most of the staff were terrified of him. The other workers wouldn't even walk past his kennel without holding their breath. But the maid was different. From day one, she and Duke had connected. His tail would wag when she appeared. He'd lick her fingers when she brought his food. During breaks, she'd sit beside his kennel in the quiet hallway, and he'd press his big head against the bars while she talked about her day. He was her only friend in that cold, empty mansion. Mr. Harrison was a fair boss, quiet, respectful, never cruel. He paid well and on time, but he was distant, always locked in his office handling business deals worth more money than most people would see in 10 lifetimes. His wife had died 2 years before the maid started working there. No remarriage, no children, no family visits. Just him, his staff, and Duke. Duke wasn't just a pet to the billionaire. Duke was his partner, his guardian, his family. And now, for reasons nobody understood, Duke wanted the maid dead. The nightmare began 3 days ago. The maid was cleaning the hallway outside Mr. Harrison's office when she heard raised voices inside. She froze, cloth in hand, and listened. "You can't do this to me, Thomas," a man shouted, voice sharp with anger. 15 years! 15 years of loyalty! Loyalty? Mr. Harrison's voice was calm but cold as ice. "You embezzled $3 million from the company and thought I wouldn't notice." The maid's stomach dropped. The man inside was Richard Chen, Mr. Harrison's business partner. She had seen him around the penthouse several times, always in expensive suits, always smiling too wide, always making her skin crawl with his lingering stares. "I was going to pay it back," Richard protested. "You were going to disappear," Mr. Harrison said flatly. "I have the bank transfers, the emails, all of it. You're finished." Silence stretched like a wire about to snap. Then Richard laughed. It wasn't a laugh of humor. It was dark, threatening, poisonous. "You think you're untouchable?" Richard hissed. "You think your guard dog and your security cameras and your lawyers will save you? Get out of my house. I'll destroy you, Thomas. Mark my words. I'll burn everything you love to the ground." Footsteps approached the door. The maid panicked, grabbed her supplies, and rushed down the hallway before anyone could spot her. Her heart pounded like a drum. As she rounded the corner, she nearly collided with Richard. He stopped, stared. His smile vanished, replaced by something empty and cruel. "Careful," he said softly. "Big houses like this are dangerous. People have accidents all the time." The maid nodded quickly and pressed herself against the wall as he passed. Her hands shook for an hour afterward. That night, sleep wouldn't come. She kept replaying Richard's words, the threat in his voice, the dead look in his eyes. The next morning felt wrong from the start. When the maid brought Duke his breakfast, he didn't come to greet her. He stayed deep in his kennel, ears flat, staring at her with an expression she'd never seen before. "Duke?" she called softly, setting down his bowl. "What's wrong, boy?" He growled. The sound froze her blood. Duke had never growled at her, not once in 3 years. "It's okay," she whispered, backing away slowly. "It's just me." But the growl continued, low and dangerous, his eyes tracking her every movement like prey. She left quickly and found Mr. Harrison in his office. "Something's wrong with Duke," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. He looked up from his computer, frowning. "What do you mean?" "He growled at me. Won't eat. He's acting different." The billionaire stood immediately and strode past her toward the kennels. She followed, dread pooling in her stomach. When they arrived, Duke was sitting calmly, tail wagging. Mr. Harrison crouched and reached through the bars to scratch behind the dog's ears. "He seems fine," Mr. Harrison said, glancing back at her. The maid stared in disbelief. "But he just—" "Maybe you startled him. He's been on edge since yesterday's incident." She nodded, but every instinct screamed that something was terribly wrong. That night, the maid went to the kitchen for water. The mansion was silent except for the soft hum of expensive air conditioning. She was about to return upstairs when she heard it. A door closing. Footsteps. Someone was in the house. Heart racing, she set down her glass and crept toward the hallway, peeking around the corner. A figure dressed in black stood near Duke's kennel. He had a bag in his hand. It was Richard. The maid pressed against the wall, barely breathing. How did he get past security? What was he doing? She watched as Richard pulled out a small bottle and carefully opened Duke's kennel. He poured liquid into the dog's water bowl, then reached into the bag again and pulled out what looked like a piece of fabric. He rubbed it along the kennel bars, then tucked it back inside. The maid's mind raced. She had read about this. Scent conditioning. Some trainers used chemicals and specific scents to make dogs associate certain smells with danger, turning friendly animals into weapons targeted at specific people. Richard was weaponizing Duke against her. He was setting her up to be killed. Terror locked her muscles. If Richard saw her, she had no doubt what would happen. She pressed deeper into the shadows as he closed the kennel and walked toward the side exit. The door clicked shut. She waited 5 agonizing minutes before moving. Then she ran upstairs and pounded on Mr. Harrison's bedroom door. "Mr. Harrison, please, it's urgent." The door opened. The billionaire stood there in pajamas, hair disheveled, eyes heavy with interrupted sleep. "What's happening?" "Richard was here," she said, words tumbling out in a rush. "He put something in Duke's water. He's training the dog to attack me. I saw everything." Mr. Harrison's expression turned to stone. "You're certain?" "I swear on my life." He didn't waste another second. He grabbed his phone and called security. Within minutes, the mansion was blazing with lights. Guards checked every camera. Police were summoned. But Richard had vanished like smoke. The next morning, a veterinarian examined Duke while Mr. Harrison had the water bowl tested in a private lab. The results came back positive for a chemical compound used in aggressive behavior conditioning. The billionaire's jaw tightened as the vet explained the science. Someone had been systematically training Duke to view the maid as a threat, using scent markers and behavioral triggers. "How long until it wears off?" Mr. Harrison asked. "Days, possibly weeks. The conditioning is strong. Until then, she's in real danger." The maid stood in the corner of the office, arms wrapped around herself. 3 years of friendship with Duke, destroyed in 72 hours. Mr. Harrison turned to her. "Pack a bag. You're staying in a hotel until this is resolved." "But this isn't negotiable. Richard is dangerous, and I won't have your blood on my hands." She nodded, but before she could leave, Mr. Harrison's head of security burst into the room. "Sir, we have a problem. The cameras were hacked. Someone looped the footage. We have no evidence of Richard entering the property. Mr. Harrison's fists clenched. Then we set a trap. The plan was simple but risky. The maid would be the bait. Mr. Harrison's security team would set up hidden cameras that Richard couldn't access. The maid would follow her normal routine but with guards positioned throughout the mansion. When Richard made his move, because they knew he would, they'd have him on camera. The maid's hands shook as they explained the plan. What if Duke actually hurts me? He won't get the chance, Mr. Harrison promised. I'll be there, every second. 2 days passed. Nothing happened. On the third day, as the maid was cleaning the hallway near Duke's kennel, she heard the lock click open behind her. She turned slowly. Duke's kennel door was open. The massive German shepherd stood in the doorway, ears forward, eyes locked on her. Then he charged. The maid screamed and ran, but Duke was faster. His bark echoed like thunder through the hallway. She could hear his claws scraping marble, getting closer, closer. Strong arms grabbed her from behind, pulling her backward just as Duke launched himself through the air. Mr. Harrison's body became a shield, one arm wrapped around her waist, the other held out to ward off the snarling animal. "Duke, down!" the billionaire commanded. But Duke didn't listen. His training had been overridden. His eyes saw only a target. Security guards rushed forward, but Mr. Harrison shouted, "Don't hurt him! He's not in control!" Duke lunged again, teeth snapping inches from the maid's face. She could feel Mr. Harrison's arm trembling with the effort of holding her back, his body a wall between her and 200 pounds of weaponized muscle. "Duke, stop!" Mr. Harrison's voice cracked with desperation. The dog's snarl filled the hallway, echoing off marble and metal. His eyes were wild, pupils dilated, foam forming at the corners of his mouth. This wasn't the Duke anyone knew. This was a creature driven by something dark and chemical, something that had hijacked his brain and turned love into murderous rage. Then, from the end of the hallway, a slow clap echoed. Everyone froze. Richard stepped out of the shadows, a smile spreading across his face like poison. Beautiful, isn't it? 3 years of friendship, destroyed in less than a week. Science is amazing. "You," Mr. Harrison growled, still holding the maid behind him. "Guards, arrest this man." But Richard laughed. "On what charge? Being in a building I co-own? Walking through hallways I have legal access to? You have no proof, Thomas. Your cameras saw nothing. Your dog just went crazy. These things happen." 2 security guards moved toward Richard, but he held up his phone. "One more step, and I release every piece of dirty financial information I have on Harrison Industries. Tax fraud, bribery, offshore accounts. Your empire will collapse before lunch." Mr. Harrison's face went pale. "You're bluffing." "Try me." Duke lunged again, and this time his teeth caught the edge of the maid's uniform, tearing fabric. She screamed. Mr. Harrison pulled her back so hard they both stumbled. "Call him off!" the maid cried. "Please, make it stop!" Richard's smile widened. "I can't. The conditioning is permanent. That dog will hunt her for the rest of his life. Unless—" He paused, letting the word hang in the air. "Unless you give me what I want." "What do you want?" Mr. Harrison demanded. "Everything. 50% of the company. A written guarantee that you'll never press charges, and a public apology for falsely accusing me of theft." Richard crossed his arms. "Or I walk away, and your precious maid becomes dog food." The maid felt Mr. Harrison's grip tighten around her. She could hear his breathing, fast and shallow. He was trapped. Duke snarled and paced in front of them, waiting for an opening. The security guard stood helpless, unable to shoot a dog without their boss's permission, unable to touch Richard without destroying everything Mr. Harrison had built. "You have 10 seconds, Richard said, checking his watch. 10, 9, 8. But Richard had made one critical mistake. He had underestimated Duke's real training, because Duke wasn't just a protection dog. Duke was a police K9 before Mr. Harrison adopted him. A dog trained to detect lies, drugs, and fear. a dog bred to understand human emotion at a level most people couldn't comprehend. And Duke could smell fear. As Richard counted down, sweat began forming on his forehead. His smile stayed fixed, but his body betrayed him. His heart rate increased. His breathing quickened. Chemical signals of stress poured from his skin. Duke's head suddenly swiveled away from the maid. His nose lifted, sniffing the air. His ears rotated toward Richard. 5, 4, 3. Duke's growl changed pitch. It became deeper, more primal. His focus shifted completely away from the maid and locked on to Richard like a missile finding its target. Richard's smile faltered. "What's he doing?" Mr. Harrison noticed it too. His eyes widened with understanding. "He smells you." "What?" "The chemical you used. It's still on your clothes, your hands. You've been handling it for days." Mr. Harrison's voice grew stronger. "Duke isn't trained to attack her. He's trained to attack the source of the threat, and right now, you reek of it." Richard's face went white. That's not how it works." Duke's snarl became a roar. "Guards, let him go," Mr. Harrison said calmly. "Sir?" one guard questioned. "Let him go." The guard stepped back. Duke's muscles coiled like springs. His eyes never left Richard. The conditioning that was supposed to target the maid had backfired spectacularly. The chemicals, the scent markers, the behavioral triggers, all of it was concentrated on Richard's skin, his clothes, his breath. Richard backed toward the door, hands raised. "Thomas, control your dog, Thomas, please." "You said these things just happen," Mr. Harrison replied coldly. "Dogs go crazy. Nobody can prove anything." "I'll release the files. I'll destroy you." "Do it. I'll rebuild. But you?" Mr. Harrison's smile was colder than winter. "You won't make it to the door." Richard turned and ran. Duke exploded forward like a bullet from a gun. The hallway erupted with the sounds of running feet, terrified screams, and snarling fury. Richard crashed through the side door into the main stairwell. Duke followed, his barks echoing through the entire building. Mr. Harrison pulled out his phone and called the police. "This is Thomas Harrison. I have an intruder in my building, being pursued by my protection dog. He's armed with stolen financial documents and has admitted on camera to attempted murder." The maid stared at him. "On camera?" He tapped his jacket pocket. "Body camera. Been wearing it since yesterday. Got every word." From somewhere below, Richard's screams echoed up the stairwell, followed by Duke's triumphant barking. The sound of police sirens grew louder outside. 10 minutes later, police had Richard in handcuffs. His expensive suit was torn, his face scratched, his pride shattered. Duke sat calmly next to Mr. Harrison, tail wagging, looking proud of himself. A paramedic checked the maid for injuries while she watched Richard being loaded into a police car. Her hands finally stopped shaking. "Will Duke be okay?" she asked quietly. Mr. Harrison knelt beside his dog, scratching behind his ears. "The vet says the chemicals will wear off in a few days. We'll keep him isolated until then, just to be safe. But yes, he'll be okay." "And the company?" Richard was bluffing. "Most of those files were fake or exaggerated. My lawyers will handle it." He stood up and looked at her. "I'm sorry you had to go through this. If you want to leave, I understand. I'll give you 6 months' salary and a reference." The maid was quiet for a long moment. Then she shook her head. "I'm not leaving Duke. He saved my life today. Well, sort of." Mr. Harrison smiled, a real smile, maybe the first she'd ever seen from him. "Sort of?" "He was about to eat me before he smelled the real bad guy." "Details." Mr. Harrison extended his hand. "Thank you for trusting me. Not many people would have." She shook it. "Thank you for believing me. Not many bosses would have." Duke barked once, as if agreeing with both of them. 3 weeks later, Duke was back to normal. The chemicals had cleared from his system, and the conditioning had faded. The first morning he didn't growl at the maid, she cried with relief. Richard was charged with embezzlement, attempted murder through animal weaponization, breaking and entering, and corporate espionage. He was looking at 20 years minimum. The maid still worked at the penthouse, still brought Duke his breakfast, still sat with him during lunch breaks, but now Mr. Harrison sometimes joined them. The cold, distant billionaire started eating lunch in the garden instead of his office, started asking the maid about her day, started treating his staff like human beings instead of furniture. Duke had taught them both something important. Loyalty isn't about blind obedience. It's about knowing who deserves your trust. It's about seeing through lies and finding truth, even when everything seems lost. And sometimes, the people, or animals, you least expect will be the ones who save your life. The security footage from that day went viral. Millions of people watched the moment Duke switched targets, the moment he realized who the real threat was. News channels called it the dog that knew too much. Social media exploded with theories and praise, but the maid didn't care about any of that. What mattered was the moment 3 days after everything ended, when she brought Duke his breakfast, and he pressed his big head against her knee, just like old times. "Good boy," she whispered, scratching behind his ears. "You're such a good boy." Duke's tail thumped against the floor. Everything was right again. What do you think? Would you have trusted the billionaire's plan, or would you have run? Have you ever had an animal protect you when you needed it most? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story gave you chills, made you hold your breath, or made you see your own pets differently, subscribe to our channel. We share emotional stories that will make you feel something real. Stories about loyalty, betrayal, courage, and love. Stories that remind us what it means to be human. Hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and never miss a story that could change how you see the world. Because sometimes, the most powerful stories aren't about people at all. Sometimes, they're about the animals who love us more than we deserve.